Hey everybody, and welcome, or welcome if you are new to the channel of your favorite, or soon-to-be favorite, bookworm Twink Supreme. So I thought I'd start today's video with some fucking wisdom from a philosopher named Aristotle. You might have heard of him. And he wrote this book called The Nicomachean Ethics. Now, in that book, he discusses the concept of time. He specifically discusses the concept of why you shouldn't be wasting time on stupid shit. Now, his words are actually very profound, so I'm going to be quoting directly from his text. And I actually have the quote right here, so I'm just going to read it to you. So in Aristotle's own words, he says, and I didn't paraphrase, like this is literally what was on the text, because people in ancient Greece were pretty wild. He goes, "Wasting time is like dipping your balls in hot fucking coffee." So I happen to agree with these extremely rational, level-headed, eloquently worded sentiments. So I will not be wasting time today. I'm not going to be wasting my time, is what I'm talking about. I'm a month late making this wrap-up because I hate inserting pictures into the videos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the book cover over here on this iPad, and that way I can just jump cut here, jump cut there, maybe a zoom here, and not insert a single fucking picture. Which makes my life significantly easier and adheres to Aristotle's philosophy. Two birds, one stone. So today I'm going to be telling you about the books I read last month in July, and I, for some reason, was bitten by a bug. I was bitten by the reading bug, because today I'm going to be telling you, I'm going to be reviewing 20 books. And I don't know how I'm going to make this fun, so I figured that I would just resurrect a prop that I used in a previous video. So say hello to my vlogger, which I named George Orwell. Hi! So George Orwell, in addition to my producer, will be joining us for this fucking video. And I'm going to attempt to review 20 books sexually. So the first book we're going to talk about is... Oh, this one! Alright. Survive the Night by Riley Sager. So for those of you who have been around for quite a while, you know that I am Riley Sager's biggest fan. I have read every single book that this author has published under the name Riley Sager, and I have given not a single one lower than 4 stars. As a matter of fact, okay, it's tragic that I have to be telling this to you, because just last year I did a video called Why Home Before Dark is fucking amazing. I don't think that that's the title, but basically that was the gist. I loved Home Before Dark. It was a 5-star book. It was in my top 10 of the year. But Survive the Night was really fucking bad. At first I gave this book 3 stars because although I hated every single fucking thing that happened, and I have an entire video talking about my complaints in this story that made no sense from the first fucking page, I still wanted to give credit where credit is due, because the book wasn't boring. I don't think Riley Sager is capable of writing a boring book. But all the gifts may be there, but they are used for crap. What is this book about? So we follow this young woman named Charlie, and she is in college, in campus, and she is this college student. And we learn that her best friend has gotten murdered from this serial killer that they've dubbed the campus killer. So she decides to leave the school halfway through the semester, and since it's the 90s and she can't get an Uber, she carpools with a random stranger who may or may not go to the school alone at night, even though she has a boyfriend. Yeah. And sure enough, she starts to suspect that this guy could possibly be the serial killer. Also, she has this condition where she hallucinates, and she has to take these pills to stop the hallucinations. And the book opens up with her throwing the pills away and getting into a car with a potential killer of her own free will. So, this is probably the dumbest book I have ever read. The setup alone is ludicrous, and the things that happen throughout the story are just so dumb! So dumb, man! And like all Sayer books, there are twists, and the twists are absolutely preposterous. I don't know how this was written by the same person who wrote Home Before Dark and Final Girls and Last Time I Lied and Lock Every Door. Like, I can't fathom how the mind behind those books did this. So, tragic, tragic, tragic. I gave this book 1 star. Alright, next. So, the next book we're going to be talking about is another book I read for Summerween, and that is The Tent by Keelan Patrick Burke. I don't really have much to say about this book because it is a novella, so it's very short. This book is written by the same person who wrote Sour Candy and The Turtle Boy, which I really loved. It's really short, it's about a haunted tent, it's set in the woods. Despite its vast setting, it feels very claustrophobic, pretty scary. Love how this person writes about characters the way Stephen King writes about characters. You get to learn so much about their backstory and care for them before the things happen to them, you know? That kind of thing. I think I would probably give this one about 3 stars. Not as good as the other 2 books I read, but still, you could do worse. On to the next. We have Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. And this is another horror novella that I read for Summerween, and it examines really sexual things like loneliness, alienation, and abandonment, and the things that people do because of the need for human interaction, like making a fucking booktube channel. I really, really dug this book. It is messed up in ways that appeal to me as a person. So the book is about these 2 women who meet online on an internet forum because one of them is selling an apple peeler and the other woman purchases the apple peeler, and then they begin this correspondence and things begin to devolve or evolve, depending on how you look at it, from there. It's dark, it's messed up. I did not expect it to be what it ended up being based on the cover and the premise. It defied expectations, and I think that this author has a lot of gifts that I would really love to see in future works. Really, really good stuff. And the last book I read for Summerween is Audition by Ryu Murakami. This book actually has a film adaptation, and this is a Japanese book that was translated into English, and we follow this man who is a single father to a son, and his wife has been dead for quite some time. And so he and his friend come up with this idea to host an audition for a fake film where they audition young Japanese women to potentially star in the film, but in reality it's a front for him to choose who he wants to seduce to be his new wife. And that's all I'm gonna say, because the less you know going into this book, the better. And I love this book so, so much. From the 4 books I just mentioned, I read all of them for Summerween, a reading blog, which I'll link down below. And Audition was the best book I read for that reading blog. I loved it so, so, so much. It was really, really good. Ryu Murakami's books, between this and In the Miso Soup, they're just so good at presenting these character studies. It's more focused on character than plot, and you get to know these characters so well in and out. And it's always this thing about, is this person really who they say they are, or is there something nefarious going on? And the poignant humanness at the center of the story, combined with the darkness that's like subtly encroaching, all building up to this crescendo of fucked up, messed up, what on earth? I did not see this coming. So, so good. I don't know, either 4.5 stars or 5 stars. It's up there, it's up there. It's really, really good. And after Audition, I read probably the best fucking thing I never knew I needed. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I fell in love with what I read after Audition. And that is a manhwa, which is basically a Korean graphic novel. So in Japan you have manga, and in America you have, you know, comic books, graphic novels. In Korea you have manhwa. And this manhwa is called Killing Stalking. This is so, I fucking loved this manhwa so much. I think it's about 64 chapters, which makes it like 4 volumes in total. So these were 4 volumes. And oh my gosh, you guys, everything, 5 stars. 5 fucking stars. I should probably tell you what this story is about. Okay, so we follow this young man named Yoon Bom, and he is this, you know, weak, frail, very shy, very introverted, and he falls in love with this other man from afar named Sang-woo. Now, he's never met Sang-woo before, but they had had this history from military training because apparently in Korea, every man of a certain age is required to serve in the military, and Sang-woo had helped Yoon-bom out when he was being bullied, and so Yoon-bom developed a crush on him. Yoon-bom breaks into Sang-woo's house and discovers that Sang-woo is a serial killer, and Sang-woo takes Yoon-bom as his prisoner. It is beyond messed up. The thing that's most disturbing to me is that people have tried to classify this as a romance. The most toxic thing about Killing Stalking is honestly certain parts of its fan base, because I consider myself a fan, but I know for a fact that this is a horror manhwa, that this story is a horror story through and through, and it's so amazing. It is so fucking good. This is like a Gillian Flynn novel that wasn't written by Gillian Flynn and was done as a graphic novel. It's so incredible. It's dark, it's messed up, it is so intense. I don't know why people would call this romance. There is literal killing happening. Is it because it's two men? Because with that logic, if this was a straight couple, why isn't the Misery by Stephen King considered a romance? Like, that's like how absurd that sounds. Maybe right behind Night Film, this is the best thing I have read so far this year. It is dark, it is twisted, it is deranged, it goes to places that I kind of wish I didn't see, but kept reading anyway. It is just fantastic in every way, shape, or form. If you are a horror fan, please find a way to read this because it is so worth it. So afterward, I read The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. Here. That's what the cover looks like. I am so sorry for my ring light. So this book is about these young high school boys who live on this street, and on this street you have this house with a bunch of girls. I don't really remember how many. They get obsessed with these girls, and the book opens up by telling us that all these girls have committed suicide. Now, this book examines so many things. My favorite sci-fi book is called Solaris by Stanislaw Lem, and that book asks the question, do you actually know the people you know, or do you only know the idea of them that they present to you? I'm not going to say how this is examined in Solaris because that would be a spoiler, but the way that's examined here is Eugenides' choice to write this story like a bunch of people reminiscing on things that had happened in the past. So it's about what they remember of these girls and what these girls chose to show them, and it's also a story about decay. Decay of various forms. Decay of the neighborhood when this tragedy happened, decay of innocence as they blossomed into their adult years, the decay of a life that they thought would last forever, one's youth, and they get more cynical when they get older, things like that. I thought the prose was beautiful. I think Jeffrey Eugenides is a beautiful writer. I do think there are some sections where he goes overboard, and I was kind of laughing at some of the parts. There was a sex scene with tons of mouth and saliva, and you would think that this guy was fucking a squid, honestly, so that was like a bit writing that I wasn't a huge fan of, but there were so many lines that I highlighted on my phone and saved because they were so good. I gave this maybe 4.5 stars. So the next book I read is a book that I read for a series that I did on my channel called Reading Super Disturbing Books. So I'm gonna link that vlog down below, and the first book I read for that vlog is Sarah by J.T. Leroy. Now this book is super controversial because this author did certain things to market this book and to get this book published, which reminded me a lot of what the author of The Woman in the Window did. Lying about things you should not be lying about. But anyway, this book's about this young boy who is unnamed, and his mom is this truck stop prostitute, and this young boy ends up joining the family business, to put it bluntly. It is very disturbing. I thought the story was quite engaging despite that. I like that it didn't go overboard, like it could have been super bad exploitation, but it only shows you enough. And there are certain parts that are quite funny, like one of the pimps tries to convince his clients that these young prostitutes are like religious messiahs, and he puts on these shows to try to convince them of this, and it's just hilarious. But this is a disturbing book, so certain scenes, I'm sure you can infer, given the premise, do go to very dark places that some readers would wish they did not read. I would put this at 3.5 stars. I think that's fair enough. Okay, So after Sarah, okay, so when I was talking about how Killing Stalking was the second best thing I read this night film, I forgot that I read this book, shame on me, and that is Survivor. And if you have been seeing my vlogs, specifically the vlog that I was just talking about, I love this book so much, bitch. It's so good. This book is so good. If you're a fan of, you know, people like Karen Slaughter and Jack Ketchum, you need to read this book. You need to read this book, specifically if you liked the book Pretty Girls, because this book also deals with snuff films. I should probably tell you what this book is about. So we follow a woman named Lisa and her husband, and they are going on vacation, and as they go on vacation, they get pulled over because Lisa's husband gets arrested for something. You'll know when you find out. And as a result, she has to spend the weekend in a motel because her husband, you know, his court date is on Monday and the courts are closed until then. While she's in the motel, she gets kidnapped and she gets taken to a place and is told that she is going to be the star of a snuff film. For those of you who don't know what that is, I suggest not Googling it if you are sensitive. It's basically this super hardcore S&M film where you kill someone on screen. So you actually kill the actor on screen. So Lisa knows that she's probably not going to be getting out of this thing, and so she does certain things to survive. Hence the title Survivor. And these things she does are so beyond the realm of forgiveness that there's no way you can call her the good guy. You could call her the protagonist, but the good guy is just not a thing. But she is what I loved the most about this story, because she is resilient, she is tough, she is a lawyer, so she's unflappable. She's like a no bullshit, no nonsense kind of woman. She is so strong. She talks back to these people who are essentially trying to scare her within an inch of her life. She talks back. She even asks one of them why they are part of this business. And the stories we hear from these people, I mean, this is all fictional, but the stories that J.F. Gonzalez makes these people tell about why they are part of this industry are just so riveting and so fascinating and so twisted and dark. I love this book so much. This is one of the best thrillers I have ever read in my entire life. I gave this book 5 stars. This is one of the easiest 5 stars I have ever given. If you are a thriller fan, and if you think you can handle books that have very triggering subject matter, so trigger warnings, obviously, please do your research, I highly suggest reading this book. It is so fantastic. I love it. 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 It's so good. So after Survivor, I read To Be Devoured by Sarah Tantlinger. I apologize for mispronouncing that name. This book is a novella. It's only about 60 pages. Wow, this book is super dark. It is like trigger warnings for literally everything, by the way. We follow this woman named Andy, and she has a girlfriend named Luna. And Andy is somebody who came from a very troubled, very traumatizing past with a lot of suffering. You know, was that really inappropriate? I am so sorry. And she develops this fascination with the consumption of dead meat because she wants to be one with the vultures. And this is a story about loneliness and grief and suffering and trauma and how humans deal with trauma in a world that doesn't want to help people out, where people don't have each other's back. It is so gruesome. The way Andy chooses to fulfill her emptiness and the various things she does in this story would make even the most steeled stomach kind of squirm, you know? Also, the writing is so beautiful. The way this author writes gore and blood and bodily fluids and functions and bodies getting chopped into is just so good. I enjoyed this one a lot. I gave it 4 stars. So after that, I read The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks, and I'm trying to hold it in such a way that you can see the cover and the ring light doesn't get in the way. But that's this book. This is The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks. And we basically follow this young man named Frank, I believe. He lives on this island, and his brother is in a mental hospital, and his brother escapes from the mental hospital. And we see what he does on the island while waiting for his brother to get back. And Frank is nuts. Frank is a sociopath. I don't want to say much more beyond that, but what this book does really well is Ian Banks writes it like it's like a young adult book, like a young adult slice of life, but the things that happen are sociopathic beyond belief. So definitely quite disturbing. I gave this book 4 stars. So the next book I read was Female Lady Rage, the book. And that is They Never Learn by Lane Fargo, and this book is so... I give this book 5 stars because this book is just so much fun. I read this book with my friends, and I did a live show, and we discussed this book in depth, and the setup is just such... the setup is just so good. Scarlet Fox, literature teacher by day, serial killer by night. And she's not just like a moral serial killer, she's like a literal I want to kill people serial killer, you know? But she kills men who wrong women. She kills bad fucking men. And the way this book is cathartic, there is revenge, there is commentary on, you know, rape culture and the patriarchy and misogyny. Reading a story about women just hitting back. The week that we read this book for my live show, the group chat was on fire every single day. There was always an update, there was always some rage, and it was just a fun time. It's a fun time. So the next book I read is Header by Edward Lee. And wow, this is another horror novella, and we follow this cop named Cummings, I believe. I can't remember their names. But he is investigating this series of murders taking place in this very rural area. There are dead bodies getting dumped, and the rationale behind these murders and the way they are carried out are things that I cannot say on camera. And frankly, they are spoilers. And frankly, the best part of this book was me finding out what a header was. Yeah. Trigger warnings, because this book is really fucked up. I loved it so much. Oh my gosh, this is one of the funniest books I have ever read, and I felt so much guilt for finding this stuff funny, but I just couldn't help it, because it was just so hilarious. It is just one of the most disgusting things I have ever read, and I love it for that. I gave this book 5 stars. I'm so sorry. I just had to. I'm sorry. I just did, okay? Not sure if I'm gonna be reading the sequels because I think one header is good enough. But yeah, great stuff. Definitely might check out more Edward Lee in the future. Love this book. I love this book so much. So the next book I read is Bathhouse by P.J. Vernon. And this book is about a young man who goes to this bathhouse. This specific bathhouse he goes to is a place where gay men show up to engage in sexual acts. And this guy is basically going to this bathhouse to cheat on his boyfriend, which already was like a big, do I really want to read this book? But I was like, okay, it looks scandalous. So the person he ends up cheating with is a serial killer, because this person tries to kill him, and this guy escapes within an inch of his life. And the rest of the book is him trying to hide what he had done from his boyfriend while simultaneously being pursued by this killer. And I did not like this book. Let me just tell you about this, okay? This, when someone puts their chin up like that, it looks like the tip of a penis. Like if you just remove the nose, doesn't that look like a dick to you? So there's a dick on the cover. There's gay bathhouse. I thought that this was gonna be a smutty Brian De Palma thriller, you know, like body double, and I was so wrong. Like this was such a tame book with barely any bite. It was so bland. I'm sorry. There was no danger. It felt very low stake. The main character, Oliver, is the dumbest protagonist, literally dumber than the girl in Survive the Night. I was yelling throughout the book because of how dumb his decision making was. He's literally handed evidence and has no clue what to do with it. I actually wrote an entire review of this book on my Bookstagram, and I just went off because this was just ridiculous. And also, the ending is so preposterously bad. It literally undermines every single thing. The book starts off with a certain character doing something reprehensible, and then you think, okay, he's gonna get payback for this, but then the ending like undermines every single thing of consequence. It just ruined the story for me. It just ruined it more than it already was. So I gave this book 2 stars. Because it was fun, and the writing is really good, but beyond that, it's just a dumb protagonist, and just not the most dangerous story. So after Bathhouse, I read Petrified Women by Jeremy Ray, and this book is a novella. I don't know if it's out yet, because this author sent me a free review copy. It's about this couple that play pranks on each other, and so this girl is gonna play a prank on her boyfriend on his birthday, but then things go wrong. I enjoyed this book for the most part. I reviewed it on my Bookstagram. It is a thriller, it's fast-paced, it's interesting, it says things about sexual assault, that I thought were quite well done, and the twist at the end was not something I saw coming, but was pretty good. I definitely think it's worth the read. I gave it 4 stars. And then after that, I read Yes, Daddy by Jonathan Parks Ramage, and this book was the one that I had certain expectations for. I had the same expectations for this that I had with Bathhouse. Like, I was like, I want some gays and smut. Okay, so this book is about a guy who seduces a much older man, and the consequences of doing such a thing. Shit goes down, it's a thriller, it's a good time, but it's also not what I expected at all. I expected this to be some super smutty, trashy thrill ride. The title and the cover are so deceptive. What I thought was not what I got at all. This is actually a really beautiful story about forgiveness and redemption, forgiveness of the self, forgiveness of others, reconciling with your own past. It's actually a pretty powerful #MeToo story because there are some male victims too, and this book addresses that pretty freaking well, actually. I was so decently surprised with how much I loved this book that I gave it 4.5 stars, to be honest. It's really, really good. So the last 2 books are actually books that I read for a vlog that I haven't finished yet because I need to read one more book for that vlog. So I'm just gonna go through them really quick. The first one I'm gonna talk about, which you will hear more about in the vlog. So the first book I read for that vlog is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I am so sorry, it was flipped over. So basically we follow these 2 twin sisters who are black, but they are white passing, which means that they could be perceived as white. And it is about their long history and the identities they chose to take on in life. So you have one sister named Desiree who took on a black identity, and then you have this one sister named Stella who took on a white identity. It tackles so many complex subjects about society and racism and the things we choose and how other people determine our lives. There are subjects like colorism. Rather than punish certain characters for doing certain things, this book actually empathizes with them and asks these tough questions alongside them. Like, what would you gain for choosing this certain identity? What will you lose? Is it worth it? It's so smart and so beautifully written. The audiobook is so fantastic. I loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars. I was so curious about what their lives were gonna be like and what the lives of their kids were gonna be like. And this book spans like decades upon decades. And it's just so, so good. And the final book I read for this vlog was Animal Farm by George Orwell, the name of this vlogger. I'm sure we've all read Animal Farm in school, but yeah, it's set in a farm with animals. They have a revolution to take down the farmer because he is meant to represent the totalitarian and the oppressive aristocracy and all that stuff. Stick it to the man. So they take him down, they start their own farm, but then it's a book about how certain animals are more equal than others and about how absolute power turns you into an asshole. It's really, really good. I gave this book 5 stars. I definitely have more thoughts on it. Anyway, I'm never reading 20 books in a month ever again. Thank you so much for watching. Like and comment and subscribe. Share this video with your friends, and I will love you forever. I hope to see you in future videos, but until then, take care.